Hey there guys, welcome to lesson number 2. This is another tutorial Tuesday. I hope that you got on well with last week's lesson. If you're new to the channel or this is the first time you've had a look at one of my tutorial Tuesdays, what I really would recommend you doing is going back and having a look at lesson 1. That was pencil skills. I just gave you a rundown of the equipment that I'm using. But my plan with this part of the channel is to do some step-by-step tutorials and sort of draw-alongs and see some of your progress and take you right from a complete beginner to hopefully trying to produce something like what we can see now, which is a drawing that I did in July of 2017. So I've got the pencils that we're going to be using today. I've got my 2H, my HB, my 2B and a 4B pencil. And what we're going to be talking about today is we're going to be talking about trying to draw something that's rounded and has got dimension to it. So a little bit like the boy's nose here that you can see, we can give the impression that something has a rounded edge to it or has a contour by the way that we lay the value down. So I'm going to be hopefully getting you to understand those principles today. The paper that we're using, we went through this briefly last week, but the paper that I like to use for any of this and to practice on, use something other than printer paper. I wouldn't suggest using printer paper. Get yourself something substantial, but I use the Strathmore Bristol Smooth. It costs round about £10 for a book like this. There's 20 sheets in there, so it is quite expensive, but I really would suggest to you giving something with a bit more of a tooth to it a go, rather than, like I say, printer paper. The pencils are grafwood, Caran D'ache grafwood pencils. I really like those. As long as you've got a reasonably good quality pencil, and we're going to be using, like I say, these grades of pencil today. So 2H, HB, 2B and a 4B pencil. And we're going to be drawing a sphere. So get your pencils ready, get your paper out, and let's have a go at this. So what we talked about last week was laying the graphite down. We're going to draw a sphere, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a very loose freehand circle for this to begin with. It doesn't need to be perfect. And I'm using my 2H pencil. Now, like I said in last week's video, the 2H pencil is quite difficult to see initially. I always like to start with a 2H pencil. It's quite a hard pencil, but what it also does is it keeps its point quite well, and it just allows me to get a bit of value into the lighter areas. So I would start with this, and then we're going to work our way up. So what we're going to understand today is light direction and how that affects an object. So we're going to say that today the light direction is coming from this top right corner, which means that we're going to have the lightest area in this region here. So I'm going to mark that out with, again, just a very rough and light circle using my 2H pencil. So going back to what we started with last week, I'm going to start putting some value in to this darkest area, which is going to be the furthest part away from the light. And I'm using my tapered stroke. If you're unsure as to what the tapered stroke is, go back to lesson number 1 and have a go at that. Now, understanding the way that light works is a fundamental skill. Whether you want to be drawing cartoon work or you want to be doing realistic portraits, paintings even, understanding how light works on objects and how our brains interpret things that are darker as being further away from the light and something that's lighter as being closer to the light source is going to allow you to create realistic drawings on a flat surface. Obviously, paper is a flat surface, and we want to give the viewer, whoever's looking at our image, the impression that it's rounded. So taking our 2H pencil, we're just going to follow the contours around. Now, one skill that's really super important is move your paper. As we said in last week's video, this tapered stroke is really pulling the pencil towards you and never moving it in a direction away from you. So I'm going from the top to bottom And in order for me to get my best stroke, I'm going to just move the paper slightly. What this also does is it keeps laying these lines, which is ultimately what we're doing. We're just filling it in with lines. It gives me a crosshatch effect, and it helps to fill the tooth of the paper in without this grainy look coming through. So I'm using my 2H pencil. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to now move up to my HB pencil. So I've got an HB pencil, I've sharpened these, holding the pencil in the same way that we spoke about it in lesson 1. So go, like I say, go and have a look at that. Come back to this once you understand how to hold it, but we're basically holding it about halfway along the shaft of the pencil, and this just gives my hand a much freer movement and freer motion without bearing down into the tooth of the paper. So what we're doing is we're working from dark to light. Now this is something that's really important. I believe it's the best way of doing things. There's a lot of artists out there that will tell you to work from light to dark. Now, with this method of going from the dark to the light, once you feel you've got enough value and enough contrast in the darkest areas, you then bring the lighter areas up to match it. If you go into the lightest areas first and you were to, for whatever reason, go slightly too dark in that lighter area, what then starts to happen is you have to then bring the darkest areas up. And if you're working in a small range of pencils, so let's say that you were working from a 4H pencil up to a 6B pencil, if you've gone too dark in the lightest areas, you might not be able to bring enough contrast out with your darker pencils to make your drawing look realistic. So by working from the light area to the dark means that you're going to struggle sometimes to balance the values and the contrast. So working from dark to light, and obviously in the opposite direction, just gives you a better feel for how the overall drawing is developing. So I'm coming back in now with my 2H pencil, and I'm just going to start feathering out from that darkest area, still using my tapered stroke, moving the paper accordingly. Now, like we said in lesson 1, this is really quite a slow process. Don't rush it. You know, some of my drawings have taken me 30 hours. If you want to produce something that's worth selling, or, you know, somebody wants to buy from you, then patience, I'm afraid, is the answer. As I said in lesson 1, and I will keep reiterating as we go through these lessons, keep turning your pencil. So I'm hitting the paper, I'm then pulling it off, and I'm trying to get as smooth a transition from dark to light as possible. I'm not rushing it, I'm not using a blending stump. We're filling in as much of the paper as we can with these strokes, and I'm just gradually bringing out the value from the darkest area, which is going to be the edge of the sphere, which is going to be furthest away from the light source. So this region that we're working in here now is going to be darker than this edge here. Now when you're practicing your spheres, or next week we'll move on to drawing a different object, take your time. I'm trying to keep these videos as best as I can down to about 30 minutes, because I understand that you don't always have the most amount of time. So I think 30-minute chunks are enough for anybody to take in the basics. But don't think that if you haven't done this in 30 minutes then you're somehow failing. What I'll do in between videos myself is I will work on the areas that we've been discussing in the video, just so that in the next week's video you can see my progress. I have also set up a new Facebook group page, which is a secret group. So if you've found one of my videos or you're subscribed to the channel, there'll be some information coming across the video towards the end that will show you or give you the information you need to join the Facebook group. And what I want from that group is I want you to post pictures of your progress. We can discuss it. We might have a few very skilled artists that join the group and they can give advice. I don't want it to be a self-publicity group where people are just putting up random pieces of art that they've done. There's a time and a place for that, and that's great. But I really would like it in its initial days to be one where we're all talking about aspects of what we're learning at the moment. So these areas of tapered strokes, gradation, pencils, things like that. Obviously keeping it as professional as possible. If you want a Facebook group where we're shouting and arguing at each other, I'm sure they exist. But let's try and keep this one down to constructive criticism and helping one another ultimately. I will put some clips of videos and things like that on there as well that maybe I've done in between videos, show you some of my bloopers as well. We all make mistakes. So I'm quite happy I'm bringing this value out now. So you can see we've worked from the left side. I'm going to take the HB pencil again now, and I'm just going to start reinforcing this darker area, this darkest edge. And I hope that you can already, so we're sort of about 6 or 7 minutes in. I am kind of rushing this. I might take my time a little bit more if this was a portrait that I was doing for somebody. But I just want you to get the concept of how we make something look rounded. But you can see now as I'm reinforcing this edge and it's fading off into a lighter area, which is exactly the patchworks that we did last week. If I've got them to hand. So we spoke about these patches going from dark to light. You can see, if I put them side by side there, we can see that this is exactly what we're trying to achieve, this dark to light. That didn't take us too long there. We're being a little bit more careful with this. And as you'll see, as this sphere progresses, we end up with something that looks fairly realistic. And that's really it. You know, I've been drawing now for coming on 3 years. And if I was to sum up what I've learned and my most important tips in sort of 1 or 2 sentences, it would be contrast is everything. If you look at anything, a photograph of anything or something in real life, your brain determines what it's looking at by figuring out the darkest and the lightest areas and creating this image in your mind of something that's rounded or something that's spherical or a nose that's rounded, and that's really it. So building this contour, this gradation, and feathering out. I'm layering on top of graphite that I've already previously laid down, so with the 2H pencil. What you find with the harder pencils, the H pencils, because they are harder and they're not quite so soft, they tend to fill in the deeper recesses of the tooth of the paper and give you a much better coverage. They stop these white specks appearing that just take the viewer's mind, and rather than interpreting it as a photograph or something that's real, it sees these white spots and these white areas, and it automatically breaks the illusion. So creating the contrast is, for me, the number one aspect So I'm going to come back to my 2H pencil now. And again, I'm just going to start bringing it out, layering on top of each other. Very, very soft strokes. I'm barely scraping the paper. If you're seeing big, deep lines and big gouges, you're pressing much too hard. Possibly you're holding the pencil too far towards the pointy bit, the lead, the graphite. So getting used to this free-flowing movement. Like I said, I'm anchoring my little finger knuckle down to the paper. And I'm working towards the lightest area, which is going to be this area here. Turning the paper accordingly. Don't feel that you have to keep the paper orientated the same way. It's one of the most difficult challenges that I've really faced over the last year or so. This is how I learned to draw, by moving the paper, and obviously making YouTube videos, and I've been doing a lot of time-lapse videos that I'm sure some of you have seen, some of you may not have seen. But moving the paper around on a time-lapse video doesn't make for a good video, doesn't hold people's attention too much. So I try and tape my paper down when I'm doing a time-lapse video, so the actual video itself looks good. But it's so difficult because this freedom of moving the paper around is something that I really like. It just means that I'm constantly using my best stroke, and what we mean by best stroke is I'm pulling the pencil towards me. I'm never scribbling. I'm not doing up and down motions. I'm not doing this. You can see that just there. It's not this action. I'm only pulling towards me. And I can remember when I first started drawing, I sort of skipped through those initial lessons where we were talking, or the teachers were talking about this type of tapered stroke, and I was trying to achieve the look that they were getting by scribbling, and it just wasn't working. It was actually doing something called burnishing the paper. So burnishing the paper is when you've really ground down into the tooth of the paper and you've actually flattened the tooth of the paper, and it gives you a very shiny look. And you'll often hear a lot of artists talking about graphite shine, and it's unavoidable because graphite's a very, very smooth textured material, so that the pieces of the graphite that you're obviously getting off into the tooth of the paper, because they are so smooth, they lie flat and they do become reflective. But if you use this type of method where we're not pressing on hard, it does minimize that. It's one of the reasons a lot of artists like to use charcoal, is because you don't get this graphite shine with it. Charcoals are much more sort of abrasive type of material, that's much more irregular. So if you hear somebody talking about graphite shine, it's probably because they've used blending stumps, tissue paper, even their finger. I can remember being taught as a child at school to use your finger to blend it out. And there's two problems with that. Number one, you flatten the tooth of the paper down. But number two, you get oil from your skin or whatever you've been eating for lunchtime on the paper. And that, again, doesn't make for a fantastic picture, particularly if someone's trying to buy it from you. One other really important lesson that I've learned is when we're drawing, I have my light source on the left hand side. Obviously I'm right-handed. I want the shadow to fall away from the tip of my pencil so that I can see where I'm working. Now if I have the light source above me or I have the light source to my right, what ends up happening is, if I was left-handed and I had the light source over to the left now, I can't see where I'm working. So that's just a neat little tip. I understand that some of you are working on dining room tables or a desk or something like that, and you might not be able to have the luxury of having a a light source in a particular area. But if you do get the chance, make sure that the light source is, like I say, for a left-hander, you'd need the light source on the right. For a right-hander like myself, you need the light source over onto the left side, so the opposite side of the hand that you are. So I'm only using my 2H so far on my HB. So again, I'm going to come in now with my HB pencil, and I'm reinforcing. I'm going over, I'm using this tapered stroke, but I'm reinforcing this darkest area. Now I'm doing this from memory. I've drawn that many spheres over my time that I'm just doing this from memory, but there's plenty of reference images that you can get off on the internet. You can Google them, just so you can see exactly how things are falling. I'm going to also show you how to add a shadow, which is going to just give this ball a three-dimensional look, but looking as though it's sitting on something rather than floating in midair. So you can see we're building the contrast up. We don't need to be completely spherical. That's absolutely not essential for this. If you wanted to make it perfectly circular, you can use a compass. You can use something to draw around. Later on in a few other videos, I might teach you a few tips as to how to draw a very accurate circle freehand. But like I say, I hope that you are drawing along with me. I hope that you're going through this process with me, because like I say, this is exactly what I did. I spent probably the best part of a year doing online videos that I had to pay for, and literally just did in real time, as you guys are probably doing now, stroke by stroke, just copying what the teachers were saying. And I've been wanting to do this for a while. I've just been so busy with other things that I haven't had enough time to put into creating this series. So Tuesdays, Tutorial Tuesdays, is where we're going to be, and we're going to go through step by step the beginning lessons, the lesson number 1. If you've not seen that, go and have a look at it, right through to drawing some super realistic portraits. We'll have a few animals and a few other random things as well, and just sort of be with me on the journey. And like I say, get involved on the Facebook group, show me some of your progress, share some of your ideas and things that you've picked up on your journey. Don't forget to ask some questions. So the information for that will be at the top of the page, or at the top of this video towards the end. I'll also leave a link to the playlist that you'll be able to find all of these videos in. So we're going to call the playlist Tutorial Tuesdays. So if you're new to it or you're showing someone to it, point them in the direction of that playlist. All of the videos will be in there. They'll be labelled lesson 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But start from the beginning. Take your time. It's not a rush. Obviously, some of you are going to find that you've got a little bit more time to practice. Others not so much. So I'm just, again, pulling this value out now. I'm just coming again from the darker areas over towards this brighter area. And I've not even gone into a B pencil yet. Well, I've gone into the HB, but I'm not into the real Bs yet. And we're already starting to create something that has form and dimension to it. You can see this is the darkest area. It's coming around. I'm going to start filling in around this right hand side now. Now, although the light is coming from this right hand side, this very far right hand edge is going to be darker than this area here. And again, that's going to give the impression that this is a ball, it's a sphere. If I was going to draw a football, it'd be exactly the same principle. There'd be different details on there, so you might have some stitching on there. And I'll show you how to create some of details in the next video when we draw a different object. I'm not going to spoil it for you, because I know you'll be spoilt if I do. But we're going to add a few details in there, and I'm going to teach you a few principles, again, that if you stick to them, And they're very simple principles. We're going to keep repeating them over and over in every video, whether we're getting into a very detailed drawing of a face or a sphere. The ideas and the techniques are going to be exactly the same. So I'm moving the paper around, using my tapered strokes. As you can see, I've not had to sharpen a pencil once yet. And initially, don't worry if it looks a little bit uneven or is not so smooth. Don't worry too much about that. As you start laying more graphite down from the slightly softer pencils, that evens itself out and you get a lovely transition from dark to light. So we're sort of getting towards 24-25 minutes. So I just want you to have a real understanding of what we're doing. I'm going to go with my 2B pencil now. And again, I'm going to start in the darker areas, and you'll really now start to see this contrast ramping up. Because I've laid down the graphite as well underneath, so I've started with the 2H pencil. This 2B pencil goes on beautifully. It goes on very smooth. And again, I'm using the same pressure. I'm just layering in the tapered stroke method. Moving the paper around. Now you will find that with the 2B pencil and upwards, you do need to keep turning it more often because it's a much softer pencil. The graphite does grab the paper much more. But if you do keep turning it, you're holding the pencil the correct way, you shouldn't find that you're having to sharpen this too often. Like I say, we've been drawing for 25 minutes nearly now, and I haven't sharpened my pencil once. So I'm bringing the contrast out, I'm bringing the value out from the darkest area. I'm feathering it out, very soft touch, going darker into light. So have a go at that for the rest of the week. Keep practicing. Go as dark as you like into this edge here. I'm going to continue with this. So at the start of next week's video, I'll show you my progress, show you where we're going with it and how we achieve it. I'm going back into the HB pencil now. Again, layering in the darkest areas so I get this lovely rich value and lovely rich tone. But thanks again so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, guys. Find the secret Facebook page. It'd be great to contact with you on there. You can also find me on Instagram. I've got a normal Facebook page, which is Artistic N1K. The Instagram page is Artistic N1K as well. So it'd be fantastic to hear from you on there. I'd love to see some of your work. And hopefully that's what the new secret Facebook page is going to allow us to do. But in the meantime, I hope you enjoy your week. Keep practicing that tapered stroke. Keep trying to get it as smooth as possible. Going through your ranges of pencil from your Bs out into the lightest. And I'll see you guys in the next video.